Hello my treasures, with Perils in Paradise releasing today, it means it's time for my day 1 Theorycraft video. So today we'll be covering 11 decks, one for each individual class, covering some decks that I really hope to try out over the next few months. We're going to start out with the DK list, which is going to be Pirate Amalgam DK. The idea behind this is essentially we're going to be using Death Growl as a way to give our adaptive amalgams Death Rattle to our Dread Deserter, so we can have infinite charge minions, and then give this minion things like Wind Fury through Sailboat Captain in order to make it a permanent charge minion within our deck. And we're also going to be buffing everything up through Atleast Gore Fiend, and you can even copy the Death Rattle of this onto Amalgam and other cards, making this actually quite a potent deck if you can get the Death Rattles rolling with a backup plan of things like Helia for some Plague support and other stereotypical Rainbow DK win conditions. All right, now for the Demon Hunter, which is going to be the next list, which is Arana OTK Demon Hunter. Essentially, the idea behind this is we're going to be using the draw power within Demon Hunter in order to draw through our entire deck, using a combination of outcast cards with Glaivateer in order to OTK our opponent by making our opponent take a bunch of fatigue damage instead of ourselves. We also do have a few ways to mana sheet, such as Marrying in the list, or generate additional cards that could control the board state until then. We're going to be using Hot Coals as the 29th and 30th card in the list, just as an additional AoE. However, you could use Rest in Peace instead if you want to cut a Marin out of the list. The next list is going to be for Druid, where we're going to be playing Big Spell Druid, using Mista Vista as a way to duplicate any high-cost spells that we have, including Hydration Station, which will revive Fae, Nest, and Unkiliax a multitude of times, making it incredibly difficult for our opponent to deal with. We also have Tsunami as a way to do 9 damage to our opponent's face while also freezing out our opponent's minion just in case. And then we do have a backup plan of things like the spell damaging package in order to maybe OTK using a bunch of additional copies of Swipe. We are also going to scale up to New Heights using New Heights, so maybe we can get up to absurd amount of mana such as 40 plus, which should theoretically be possible within this list. Now for the next switch, which is going to be Hand Buff Hunter, centered around Line Cook, Sasquatch, and our new friend Ranger Gilly, which will allow us to easily buff up all the minions within our hand using a bunch of the new hand buff cards that Hunter will be gaining access to, plus some of the existing things such as Messenger Buzzard. Essentially, the game plan is to overwhelm our opponent with a bunch of big buffed minions such as Hollow Hound to combo it then out with always a bigger Dromagar in order to OTK our opponent, or just charge into our opponent's face with a huge King Plush. This deck should be a perfect mix between a combo deck and an aggro deck for those players who do really prefer the aggro variant. Though it is also worth mentioning, if you could find room, you could in theory add an additional weapon to this list and then run in South Seas Deckhand as a way to keep buffing them up and do like 60 plus damage, but this felt like a more fun way to do this. Now for the next list, which is going to be for Priest, we're going to be playing Location Priest, aka Prison of Yogg-Saron Priest. Essentially, the game plan here is going to be duplicating as many prisons of Yogg-Saron for the perfect RNG that we can get through things like Sasquatch and a bunch of other different combo pieces that should allow us to get additional copies of this card. This was a deck that I tried out in Titans, and it was missing a few cards from being really relevant. And I will say this, because Reno does exist, this probably isn't going to be the best deck in the world, but it is quite funny because there is quite a bit of neutral location support within this set. Now let's get onto the next list, which is going to be Freeze Mage. For Freeze Mage, we're going to be using some of the big spell mage support within the set, such as Surferopod, as a way to turn our next spell we draw into cast one drawn, hopefully hitting either Blizzard, Under the Sea, or Tsunami. And then we're also going to be using a Excavating package as a way to get some type of alternate win condition and control the board. This is probably the closest thing you're going to get to a control deck in 2024, at least in Standard right now, as it does have a lot of ways to out-control your opponent, hopefully, while also doing enough damage to your opponent's face by just stacking a bunch of minions and keep freezing their minions on board. Now let's get onto the next list, which is going to be Holy OTK Paladin. This is going to be centered around Sun Sapper Linessa. Any spell that costs 2 or less, cast twice. Essentially, we're going to be discounting Consecration using Sea Shill as a way to get it down to 1 mana, thus doing 4 damage instead of 2 using Linessa. Then, on top of that, we're going to be using the Holy Glow Sticks to hopefully OTK our opponent, and also having the backup plans of O Manager, or even a combo between Horn of the Windlord and Divine Brew. This deck hopes to control the board state until you can get this OTK off, and honestly, out of all the lists that I prepared for today, this is the one that I'm most excited to try out. For Rogue, we're going to be playing Wishing Well Rogue using the new coin generating cards such as Metal Detector and O Manager. This gives the deck a little bit of additional push that it actually needed, since the deck was always missing at least one more additional coin generating card, and finally in this set we have access to it. Essentially the game plan is to either win through the random generation of Wishing Well, or through the random generation of our Excavating package using things like Tess. We also have a weird, funny alternate win condition with Maestra, giving us any hero card from the past, thus making any rogue card that we use before we slam that card down, giving us infinite value off of Test as long as we slam down Test after we use one Shadow Step or Break Dance. This is probably going to be the alternate win condition the deck wins through, but most of the time you're going to be winning through Wishing Well. Now for the next list, which is going to be Insidious Shaman. The idea behind this is we're going to draw through as much as our deck as humanly possible, then win by using Insidious in combination with Shutter Block, which will allow us to shuffle 15 eruptions into our deck that do 1 damage apiece, but at the end of the turn, they will then do 2 damage apiece. So in theory, if we draw through our entire deck after doing this combo, then we can slam something like Needle Rock Totem to draw through all the cards after we slam down Insidious, since it's order of cards being placed down, thus doing 30 damage to our opponent's face. Now for the next list, which is going to be Menagerie Taunt Warrior, where the idea behind this is we're going to be using All You Can Eat to draw into our key taunt minions. These key taunt minions are going to be Detonation Juggernaut, Unlucky Powder Man, and Blast Tortoise. This will allow us to easily buff up all the minions within our hand to overwhelm our opponent with a bunch of board control cards. We can also use the Puppet Master Dorian as a way to get additional copies of the 3 cards we're going to draw off of All You Can Eat, or even Quality Assurance. Because this deck does run a bunch of different taunt minions that do not have tribal synergies, this should allow us to overwhelm our opponent with a bunch of big taunt minions by swarming the board turn after turn, while also taking cards out of their deck one by one using things like Ham the Hungry. Alright, now for the final deck, which is going to be Snake Ouroboros Warlock. Essentially, the game plan is we're going to be using the Excavating package as a win condition to chip away at our opponent's HP, while also swarming the board with infinite copies of Viona's Death Rattle by hopefully hitting Viona's Death Rattle on a Amalgam, thus allowing us to scale this up infinitely with additional copies, using the new Turris of Dark Marrow in order to duplicate any Death Rattle that we do slam down. I felt like this is probably one of the decks that will probably be not explored as much as you would originally think. Probably people are going to go down more of a pure Ouroboros route, but I thought this was a perfect way to synergize 2 ideas together without much issue. The only thing that might be a little bit questionable is endgame, since Amalgam is technically a demon, but it is what it is. It could still be pretty good depending on how that interaction works. All right, so those were all the decks that I prepared for today. Let me know down below which one you're most excited to try out. Personally, I really think the list that I'm most excited for is the Holy OTK Paladin list, just because this is a deck that I've been really wanting to try to make use of ever since Holy Glow Stick got revealed. Now, like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.